last night I was telling you about, what was I telling you about last night? I haven't slept since then. Oh, we talked about the rule of law, didn't we? We talked about why it's not only moral, but it would actually be legal. You would have the cover of law in our nation to stop abortion and exercise state sovereignty, because we never gave any of that jurisdiction to the court. I want to keep going now and talk about why, now that we're sort of growing this movement and we're finding abolitionist magistrates, why they keep rejecting, especially in the legislatures, bills of abolition. What's driving our magistrates to do what they do, and how can we change that? So that's what we're going to dive into. Basically, why do they kill these bills? Now, in Oklahoma, our first true bill of abolition came about in 2016, and it was just, nobody's paying attention to it. It got nowhere. And each year, we've gotten a little further, to the point now where they couldn't ignore it. Where they're calling press conferences and going on TV and spreading lies, and they're in full-out attack mode because we're being successful with our message. Texas has had a bill of abolition the last couple of years, but it didn't get out of committee either. You've got one this year we're going to talk about. Why do these guys kill the bills? Let me help you, because I know many, many legislators in the work that I've been involved in, and I've gotten to know them personally, and I've seen up close what's making them tick, and you need to understand this so we can use it to our advantage. First of all, they keep saying, well, we're your representative. We represent you. They keep using this word, representation, but I don't think it means what they think it means. Right? They don't understand their own job description. See, they believe that we live in a democracy, and that to represent us means to just go and do exactly what we tell them to do, as defined by 50% plus 1. They believe that's what representation is. Of course, what it really means to be a representative is to stand in the place of someone else and protect their interests. Their job is to protect our interests on our behalf. We've given them the authority to protect our lives, liberty, and property for us. To carry guns, to carry badges, to put laws in place to protect our interests. They are our representatives. That's what it means. Not to just do what we tell them to do indiscriminately. That's not representation. But yet they think that's what their job is. Now, another reason they kill good bills is because they actually do not agree with us. Now, they say the right things. They have test marketed it. They've done their surveys. They've hired marketing firms. They know that if they say, I'm pro-life, and they put it in a really pretty postcard to enough times to you, you will believe it. But it doesn't mean they believe it. And too many times we give them the benefit of the doubt, and we think they actually mean what they say, and maybe, oh, well, the poor guy, bless his heart, he just doesn't know how to carry it out. I'm telling you, more times than not, they don't even agree with you, because the culture is changing, because the church is changing. Mainline Christian denominations are pro-abortion now. Take the Methodists, for example. In their book of discipline, they say, we support the legal option of abortion. Well, who else says things like this? How about the Lutherans in America? This church opposes legislation that would outlaw abortion. That's their social statement on abortion. How about the Presbyterians? They say that those well developed enough to survive outside the womb ought not be aborted. But if you can't make it outside the womb, you're fair game. That's the Presbyterian position. The Episcopal Church is the worst. They are resolved that this church express its unequivocal opposition to any action on the part of governments that would limit the access of a woman to safe means of acting on her decision for abortion. Ladies and gentlemen, we're living in a country where the church culture is completely gone upside down. Everything. The gospel's upside down. Social justice is upside down. What it means to be salt and light is upside down. They're pro-abortion. They're pro-homosexuality. These are the mainline established churches in our nation. And as goes the church, as goes the culture. So if this is what they're thinking in the church, why would it be any different down there at the Capitol? Do you know how you get to be a magistrate? Do you think you have to know your job and how to do it? Do you have to know what good government is and principles of good government? Do you have to pass any kind of test or exam? Do you even have to own property? Do you have to be a responsible adult? No. The way you get elected is you have to be old enough, and then you win a beauty contest. You have enough money to send enough postcards and have just the right haircut, just the right, maybe military service, or enough people in the community, and enough people vote for you. That's it. You're in. Well, makes us think they would be any smarter on any topic than any one of us? So they look just like the rest of us. They're coming right out of the church, and the church culture is not any different than the secular culture. They just know what to say to get elected. So they don't really agree with us. Now, they also fear opposition. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, man, I want to get poked in the eye. I want to get cussed. I want my email box flooded with 1,000 emails saying that I'm a blooming idiot. I mean, when these guys get on the wrong side of an issue, they hear about it. They hear about it all over the place. And if you get the wrong group mad at you, they don't let up, and they can unseat you. So they don't want to be opposed. They want to keep their heads down and just keep their jobs. They fear that opposition. They also presume to know the future, right? They run around saying, this will never work. I'm not going to do that for X, Y, and Z reasons. And it's just a reason not to do something. The other thing they fear is reprisals from leadership. Okay? Just because you are one of, say, 150 legislators doesn't mean you have the same power and authority as all the other legislators. There's a power game that's played at the Capitol and in powers of position. And so they fear what can happen from, if you're just in the committee and you want to vote for this bill, well, if you vote against the chairman, you're not getting your legislation heard. And if you go against the leader of the Senate or the leader of the House, you can forget about it. You're not having anything heard. You'll never be a chairman. You're just going to sit in your office and rot away for the rest of your term. So they fear that. They fear becoming irrelevant by going against leadership. Now, here's another little dirty secret. You have no real representation. The average person on the street thinks, I have a state representative. I bet he has a right to get a bill heard at the Capitol and get a vote on it. If I and my friends go to my state representative and we have this great idea for a bill, and he says, you bet, I'll run it, we are under the mistaken notion that that thing is going to get a hearing and receive some votes, up or down. And that they all have that opportunity at the Capitol. Did you know that's completely false? You do not have representation. There are two people that have all power in the legislature. In the Senate, it is the lieutenant governor, the president of the Senate. He has all power. He is the Pharaoh of the Senate. And on the House side, it's the Speaker of the House. They appoint every committee chairman. They appoint every member to committees. And they assign every bill to the committee that they want. Do you realize that gives them complete sovereignty over our lives? Over your legislator and my legislator? They have no power. They have no voice. They are forced to buy, beg, steal, and trade votes with leadership to get anything done. That's the reality down there at the Capitol. So we only need to spend our time applying pressure in certain key areas. Don't waste your time talking to the minions. You have to go straight to the Pharaoh. You go straight to Gru. All right, so why do they kill bills? No real representation, and because they fear losing office. When you want to keep your job, you figure out very quickly how to keep it, don't you? So they know that what they need to do is appease as many of the voters as they can. Let's make a lot of voters happy by doing things that look really cool and attractive to them, and let's avoid ticking anybody off. That's the two things they want to do. So that leads to certain modes of behavior. Now let's take the issue of abortion. You've got one bill over here. This bill is going to be perceived by the mass of voters as being pro-life. It's a positive sort of step that we could take in the right direction, so they say, to protect lives. It's non-controversial. Nobody's barking about it. It will make you look like a hero. You'll be able to say you're pro-life because you voted for this bill. And that's going to help you get reelected. Over here we have a bill that would actually criminalize abortion, but it's very controversial. It's going to fill up your email box and your voicemail box. It's going to have all kinds of medical associations and crazy women who march in front of the Alamo showing up in your office, and they are going to hate you and despise you, lie about you. Which bill are you going to pick? Right? They're going to not do what's needed and necessary. They're going to do the thing that looks good, sounds good, smells good, but does nothing. That one is called pink, puff, and piffle. That's what that's called. Pink, puff, and piffle. And we got to watch out for that. Right now, down in the Texas legislature, and I listed some of these for you on the handout, you got to watch out for Senate Bill 1500. It's a pro-life bill, and it says it's banning abortion, or it's, what is it doing? Oh, yeah, we're going to ban abortion if there's a heartbeat, right? We're already like 30 minutes behind on our program tonight, so I don't want to tell you everything wrong with a heartbeat bill, but basically it's not going to save any lives unless it's an accident. Because early on, finding the heartbeat on the fetal monitor is as easy as the doctor going, well, I don't hear anything. And who's going to police it? And it doesn't establish justice for all the ones where you don't hear the heartbeat. So they've tried these before in states, and they get thrown out. Now, keep this in mind, too. It doesn't matter what they pass. Every pro-life bill, every abolitionist bill, anything at all that would remotely curtail abortion is going to be thrown out by the court. You know that. So ultimately, this comes down to a battle of wills. At some point, somewhere, a magistrate will say, I don't care what the court said. We wrote the law. I'm going to enforce it. End of story. That's the only way we will abolish abortion, period. End of story. But in the meantime, we have to keep teaching the public what it's going to require. And we can't let them hide behind they can't hide behind this. They've got a choice to establish justice or do a heartbeat bill. We can't let them get away with hiding behind the heartbeat bill. But those leaders that I talked about, the established leaders, they're going to go, we love SB 1500. And you're going to go down there and say, I want you to vote for House Bill 896. And they're going to, we're pro-life. We love children. We affirm the sanctity of life. And we're going to make sure SB 1500 makes it through. And that's going to stop abortion. That's what they're going to tell you. And then you're going to surprise them when you go, no, that won't establish justice. That's not right. And we're not going to give you any points for running that through this year. This is the only way to go. So watch out for that one. Another one I put on your list is House Bill 47. This one would revoke the medical license of a doctor for doing abortions. Now, this is another example of Texas running way behind Oklahoma again. Guys, we ran this bill in 2016. Didn't work then. It's not going to work now just because Texas is doing it. Here's the argument that the opposition made back then, and it makes sense to me. How can you take a doctor's license away for doing a medical procedure that is outlined in hundreds of pages of statutes of medical code directed at doctors? Wait, you're going to take my license away for doing something you told me it's legal to do? How's that going to work? It's not. And it doesn't establish justice either. Oh, we're going to take your license because you murdered a human being. That's not justice. That's not going to fly without fixing the criminal code. But they're going to be all behind that one. That's the one they're going to line up behind that's not needed and necessary, that looks good, but it's not great. Watch out for these two bills. There's one in the House, one in the Senate. They're basically identical. These are pro-life bills again to remove public funding of abortion. That's what they're going to say. We're going to defund abortion in the state. I actually read the language of the bill, though, and there's so many caveats and loopholes in it, like, well, it doesn't apply if there's federal funding involved from some other direction and everything. Medicaid, Planned Parenthood, the money's going to keep flowing, guys. This bill's so full of loopholes. Now, it is a good thing to not spend public money on abortion. That's not why you oppose this. What I'm saying is, watch out, because they're going to hide behind this bill. They're not going to support abolition, and they're going to say it's because they're supporting this bill over here. Don't let them get away with that, and they're going to be behind that. This one's really scary. I don't even know whether to call this a pro-life bill, but I bet they do. This is a joint resolution to change the Texas Constitution, to put in it specifically that abortion is prohibited in this state, which sounds great, except there's also the phrase, as interpreted by the Supreme Court. So they're wanting to put into your Constitution that you're going to bow down to the federal judiciary. It's in your state constitution if this gets through. This is big bad news right here. You don't want any part of this, because you are abdicating your rights as a sovereign nation of Texas if you pass this one. And they'll probably call it pro-life, because after all it says, abortion is going to be prohibited when the Supreme Court says so. That's really bad. But look out for this. Yeah, it's kind of like a trigger bill. You might call that, it's triggering me, boy. All right. So what we have is this really cozy arrangement with those leaders down at the Capitol. They are in comfortable. They're in tight with the pro-life lobbyist. The pro-life lobbyist says, here's these bills you want to run, sex selection ban, heartbeat bill. You know, if they're handicapped, you can't kill them for that reason. If they have Down syndrome, we're going to protect those kids, right? Please run these bills. And the GOP establishment says, yeah, we're going to support the pink, puff, and piffle. And then you can call us pro-life. We'll get reelected. You'll get more donations. I'll get more campaign funds. And next year, we'll do it all over again. That's the cozy arrangement. We have got to stop playing this game. Yes. So last night, I talked to you about the strategic, or the legal lies and the strategic lies that have been put out there by the pro-life movement and by our political leaders. Let's talk about what the strategic truth is. What should we do? Right? That's what we all want to know. I told you it comes down to a battle of will. It comes down to a battle of character and righteousness in leadership. Who was the greatest king of Israel? This is a pop quiz for anyone under 20 years old, and not Josiah, because we talked about it last night. Anybody? Who? David was the greatest king of Israel, one of them says. Let's make it multiple choice. Anybody else have an option? Saul? Samson wasn't a king. Maybe my ears are stopped up. Okay. Scripture says the greatest king of Israel was Josiah. Right? You can find his story in 2 Kings 23, 2 Chronicles chapter 34. All you people under 20... Actually, who knew it was King Josiah? Okay, so all other 55 of you that didn't raise your hand, you need to read these two chapters for homework before, let's say, Sunday night, tomorrow night, right? So Scripture says there was never a king like Josiah who had zeal for the Lord and His law. He was the greatest king of Israel. Now he came to power at a time when Israel had completely forgotten God's law. There's a very interesting little verse in there that says when he came to power, it was a time when parents were making their children pass through the fire. They were burning up their children as sacrifices to Molech. So they were practicing child sacrifice. Now the question is, what did King Josiah do to stop it? Okay? Do you think he established state education and put up billboards and ran people through government schools and for 2 years taught them that abortion is bad, okay? And we think you should stop doing that, and we're going to cut back on it. We're going to start regulating the altars and the sacrifice, and we might stop it some years down the road. Is that what King Josiah did? Did he wait for a majority of cultural support? Did he go out with surveys? Did he hire a marketing agency? Hey, guys, help me market this to the people while they'll swallow it. You know what we need to do? We need to find out how many priests of Yahweh are out there, how many priests of Baal are out there, and when we get a bigger number on this side, when the majority is with Yahweh, then we're going to stop child sacrifice. That's not what he did. He called all the people together. He built them a big old stage, a Teddy Roosevelt, bully pulpit. He read them the law. He said, ladies and gentlemen, today it stops. Right now. He didn't wait for that majority. He wasn't going to wait for them to change their minds. Calls them all together, reads them the law, and he changes the culture by telling them what will not be permitted anymore. That's how he did it. And that's how we have to do it today. It's going to take leadership at the Capitol, leadership at the governor's level. If we can't get them, we got to go for a sheriff. If we can't go for them, we got to go for a dog catcher. We got to go for somebody with some authority somewhere to put a stop to this, so that we can rally to that magistrate, create an example, and change the culture with the power of the office, which is what Matt was talking about last night. This is the strategic truth. Legally, we can do this. I showed you that. Morally, we must do it. Let me talk about the bill. It's House Bill 896. I have to think of the keys to remember the number. 896. And it is the Abolition of Abortion in Texas Act. Now, last night I showed you this statute in the family code where it says a living human child only gets rights and privileges after they survive birth or an abortion. So what this bill would do is simply change that language a little bit to this and say a living human child from the moment of fertilization is entitled to the same rights, powers, and privileges as are any other human child. That's it. Super simple. That's the bill. And when you call them and you tell them that you want them to vote for this, they're going to go, oh man, well, I haven't read the legislation. I'm going to have to study it. It's a complicated legal matter. No, that's all it is. They'll do that to you every time. Say, I tell you what, could I just read what it does to you? Because it's like one sentence. Can I read it? Tell me if you'll vote for this, would you? There it is. Now there's another provision that's really cool in it, and here it is. It says, any federal law, any executive order or court decision that purports to supersede, stay, or overrule this act is in violation of the Texas Constitution and the United States Constitution and is void. It just says, it's going to instruct everyone right there how to enforce the bill. Because they're not going to want to enforce it. Even if they pass it, they're not going to want to enforce it. So we're going to spell it out for them right there. We have to support this bill and not any of the other pink puff and piffle that I put on your handout and that we've talked about. All right, now let's get into what we can all do. We need to be practical. What steps can we take? I know that's what you want to hear about. We've been naive and or guilty for a long time. We're not going to do that anymore. You guys just got unplugged from the Matrix. Now you guys got to go unplug more people from the Matrix. There's a lot of them out there, right? You've seen the banks of people in all the churches on Sunday morning, sitting there like human batteries, powering up the parking lots, pews, and pastors, and pulpits, and programs. Unplug them. We got to redirect the energy into the things we're talking about right here. Man, I never thought of the Matrix analogy before till just now. That was good, wasn't it? I got to remember that. Okay, so we're going to understand the enemy's game and prepare ourselves with the answers. We're going to focus the fight on the correct front, which is the people I've been talking about. We've got to take these magistrates who have the power and the authority. We're going to scrutinize what they do. We're going to educate them with materials. We're going to cajole them because they've got the duty and the authority to do it. We're going to break up this cozy arrangement, not let them get away with it anymore. Specifically, that means we have to find the righteous magistrate and we have to get behind them and work with them. So like in Oklahoma, we've identified this state senator, Joseph Silk, and he is a blasted champion for the cause. But what that means is that when he was up for re-election last summer before last, we were knocking on doors, we're putting out the flyers, we're sending the emails, we're making sure all the pastors all throughout that part of the state know that this is your guy, because he brought a lot of heat on himself for what he did. But we made sure he got reelected so he'd be there to be our champion for another 4 years. Find him and support him. The flip side of that is you got to oppose the unrighteous ones. Now, I give everybody the benefit of the doubt. We even gave our Pharaoh in the Senate the benefit of the doubt. We've been to him. We've educated him. We've given him materials. He's met with our guy that ran for governor. He's met with us. He's got the material. He knows the truth up here, and he chose to reject it. Therefore, we get to go after him. We get to hold him accountable. Putting flyers out in his district, putting billboards up, filling up his box. Remember how I told you they fear opposition? Guys, we have to make them fear that opposition for all the right reasons, to make them do the right thing. Let's give them what they fear. If they're afraid, let's make them afraid for the right reason, to do the right thing. We have to oppose them, unseat them. We had a guy who was doing horrible things, called himself a Republican, called himself a conservative, and on our conservative index that's been around for almost 40 years, the guy scored 10%. And he only did that by missing votes, because he got free points for missing votes. He was better off. If he had actually been there to vote, he would have had 0. If you learn anything, it's to shoot with a rifle, not a shotgun. If you've only got $100,000 and you want to throw it at a problem, you don't throw it all over the place. Find where it will do the most good and you focus it. We went after that one senator and we unseated him. Hardly ever does an incumbent lose. He lost by 60%. And that's because everyone in the state ganged up on him. And now they know they need to listen to us. We have to be strategic this way. You can't just go around griping at all of them. Find the baddest one and make an example out of them. And that might mean you have to run yourself. You've got a representative. You've tried to educate him. You've met with him. You sent him information. He's not listening. Somebody's got to run against him. You can't let him we can't keep doing the same thing. Somebody's got to be there with a different kind of a voice. So you're going to apply pressure. What that looks like is Luke chapter 18, right? The persistent plea. Yes. Luke 18, the parable of the unjust judge. The woman comes there every day. Grant me justice. The guy doesn't even agree with her, but he's sick and tired of her coming saying, grant me justice. He says, you win. You've got to put these guys on a rotation. You're going to email them every Sunday morning before you go to church. You're going to leave a voicemail every Monday morning before you start work. You or somebody's going to show up at the Capitol with an appointment, and you're going to take the doctrine of the lesser magistrate, and you're going to say, I need you to read this and tell me what you think about it next weekend. And if he doesn't, you're going to keep bugging him and bugging him and bugging him. Put them on a rotation. As long as they're in session, you're in session, in their ear, giving it to them. Because the lobbyists do it, the opposition does it, you've got to do it too. You got to teach others about good policy. There's only, 85 people strong in this room, but we're from how many different congregations of believers, from how many different counties in the state of Texas? You got to take this leaven, go chunk it deep in the loaf in your church, and you got to turn them all into these passionate advocates, like you are, for this to work. So House Bill 896, you've got to tell everybody about it. That's like the thing that gets you all going, right? What brings us close together and makes us effective is when we work together. It energizes us, it excites us, but you got to have a project. Right now, for the next couple of months, this is your project, okay? It gives you something that we can all rally about. When you go to Mexico and you build a church, you know that your project this week is throwing cinder blocks. Right now, this is your project, throwing HB 896 and building it up. Because it's about abolition. It gives you that opportunity to teach the difference between pro-life regulation and criminalization. And you can just use that. All right, so how do you support it? These are the folks, right? You've already made a note of them in your notebook. On the right-hand column, I put some websites there. Do you see that? You're thinking to yourself, how do I get in touch with the governor? How do I get in touch with the lieutenant governor? I put a website for each office. So the Speaker of the House, Denis Bonin, has like his own little web page. I put a link to it there. You type it in there. You'll get a phone number where you can start leaving voicemails. There'll be a place where you can send him a message online, like an email. You're going to send that. And you're going to find somebody from your church who wants to make a pilgrimage to the high holy city and go talk to the man. You need to figure out who your state representative and your state senator are. There's a web link right there on your notes. You put that in there. You put in your name and your address. It tells you who your representative is. You need to contact your representative and say, I am way behind 896. You need to be behind 896. Do you understand it? Can I give you information about it? And you start working on him, because he might be the next great William Wilberforce in the House if we lose some of these other guys. Now, there is no bill in the Senate, but that doesn't mean you don't talk to your senator, because you've got to educate him. And he could author a bill like it over in the Senate. Just because he hasn't already filed one doesn't mean they can't get one, because they can gut another bill at any time and change the language in it. All right, so you also have a link there to Governor Greg Abbott. Go on his site. You need to hold him accountable for not making good on his pledge to Rusty's family and using his power to stop abortion right now. And of course, you need to go to Dan Patrick's site, which I put on there also, and give him what for. That's really important, because he's the Pharaoh over the whole Senate. He has a bully pulpit. All right. So you're making all those contacts. What else? Get involved with like-minded activists. You're already doing that here. You're getting a feel for what that's like. Now it's time to go drag other people into it with you. It's a whole lot more fun to do hard work when you do it with friends. Do it together. All right, follow freethestates.com. Check that out on Facebook. Like them and follow them, because right now they're primarily focused on Oklahoma, but we fire out updates all the time about state sovereignty, about abolition. You'll see what's going on in all these different places. That's a great one. The most important one for you, if you're from Texas, is abolishabortiontexas.com. That's the website. You can also find them on Facebook, but they will give you all the blow-by-blow nitty-gritty on this House bill and what you can do to help. If there's rallies going on and other events like this, they'll tell you about it. So they will give you ammunition and point your rifle and tell you when to pull the trigger. All right. right, you all are going to prepare yourself with apologetics. You've learned the kinds of things to say and the kind of questions to ask tonight. And tomorrow night, of course, we're going to give you a whole lot more of personal evangelism apologetics. You're then going to engage in evangelism one-on-one with your friends, with your weird family members, with your Facebook connections, and you're just not going to stop. I want to bless you with this definition of apologetics. You all know what apologetics is, right? Being able to give an answer. Can you give me a biblical scripture to define it? I have an even better one than that, though. It's the same author talking to a different crowd, but he put a different spin on it, right? Follow along from Colossians chapter 4. Walk in wisdom toward outsiders, making the best use of the time. Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each person. This is my favorite one because he says you walk toward people. Toward people. Oh my goodness. When I grew up in the church, I was told that we could just let our light shine by being good Christian people that didn't drink, smoke, play cards, throw dice, and things like this. And it was kind of like this. I'm just going to sit here, and someday somebody's going to come up to me and go, "Oh, I just see the light of Jesus shining off of you, and I want what you have. Could you tell me about Jesus?" It just doesn't work that way. You've got to approach people. That's efficient. That's how you make use of the time, Paul says. And then he says you've got to be gracious. I know too many people who are just plain boneheads with how they share the gospel. It's hard to hear that you've been wrong, that you've been stupid, that you're a sinner. People don't want to hear that. We're also full of ourselves, right? So you only make it harder for them to hear that by being weird about it. Don't be weird about it. So, I do a whole sermon on that. And then he says, know how to answer each person. Now, I don't have a problem with going out and dumping 1,000 gospel tracts out there on the beach or whatever. But guys, everybody's on a spiritual journey, and different people have different questions. They have different hang-ups and different problems. You can't save 1,000 people with 1,000 tracts. You actually have to talk to them. You have to find out what their hang-up is and know how you ought to answer that person. Which means you got to know stuff about stuff. So keep learning and ask people what they think and why, and then you'll be able to better minister to them. Can we abolish abortion? Absolutely. It begins with the will to do so. We have the will to do so. We have to find magistrates with the will to do it. Put them in power, and then they will do it using the proper strategy like King Josiah. Legally they can do it, and morally we must do it. Yeah.